Well, hello there. Welcome to the Abundant Wellness Podcast. I was checking to make sure I was live. Well, welcome to another Saturday afternoon with Abundant Wellness. And as usual, I'm always so glad that you have joined me today. Some of you will be on live, some of you may not have been quite able to make it, but that's okay because we do have this recorded. You will be able to find this on my Facebook page, but you are also able to find it on my YouTube channel, which I would love for you to subscribe to, and I will put that later on. I will be sure to post what that is exactly. It's Abundant Wellness. You can look up Abundant Wellness off of YouTube. You'll see my face, you'll see my picture, you'll be able to find it, and you could go there to see the past recordings or talks that I've had. So check it out. But I'm gonna wait maybe another minute, a little less than a minute, so I can start right at 3. Some of you might make this your routine, and I don't want to cheat you and start too early. All right, my clock is saying that it's 3 o'clock, so we're gonna go ahead and start. So for those of you that are just coming on, or those of you that are new, I would like to welcome you to the Abundant Wellness Podcast. We're so glad that you are here. You have joined us today. I pray and hope that you are having a wonderful Saturday afternoon and that this can enrich it even more. So thank you for being here. Welcome. I'm going to go right ahead and share my screen so that we can get right into our topic for today. Oh, and I just realized I forgot one thing. So you can hear me a little bit better. Just remembered about that. All right. This is my microphone here. I think you're going to be able to hear me much better. How is that? Does that sound better? All right, fantastic. So, welcome again to Abundant Wellness Podcast. Really interested in the topic for today. Let's get right into it. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Welcome to the Abundant Wellness Podcast. Abundant Wellness meets every second and fourth Saturday of the month at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. I am located here in Texas, South Texas, actually right on the border of the United States and Mexico. So I am in Central Time. My name is Joanne McDermott. I am a board certified functional nutrition and lifestyle practitioner, and I am a mental health coach. That is a bit of a mouthful. Well, I teach people how to use diet and lifestyle to reverse chronic illnesses such as diabetes, hypertension, cancer even, or even things like anxiety and depression. That is a chronic illness as well. And I am a mental health coach. So I give you the tools and to be able to get past certain types of mental illness. So whether it be anxiety or depression or past trauma, I share, tools to help to reverse that, overcome that, and so that it doesn't consume your life. You are able to have control, over your feelings and your emotions and just feel better and get past that. I do the mental health coaching. I had to throw the mental health in along with the physical health because the two are very closely tied together. When one's affected, the other one is. Can't have one good and expect the other one to be better. They both have to be better. They both have to be improved. But before I get started, I have to throw out my disclaimer here. My disclaimer is that the information provided is intended to promote overall well-being and is not a substitute for personalized professional care. So if you are seeing a practitioner, I'd like for you to continue seeing a practitioner. I'm not here to replace what they're doing, but I'd like to think that I'm supplementing what they are doing and how they're working with you. But more than that, more than anything, viewers are encouraged to be empowered by learning how the body functions, allowing them to take an active role in their own health goals and decisions. You see, I believe that you should be a part of your health care. You should be given options and the right to be able to choose what's better for you and what you would prefer, because after all, it's your body, and who knows how you feel more than you? You know how you feel. You know what's right for you. You know what's off. And if you can just understand a little bit about how the body works, or different ways in which you can heal your body, then you can make a more informed decision as to the route that you want to go. So yes, be a part of your health care, because sometimes what works for one doesn't work for the other. Protocols are good. It's good in the sense that it gives us a place to start, but I wouldn't say that it's necessarily the all in all, the best way for everyone. So I would love for you to learn to be empowered. So the topic that we're going to be discussing today is epigenetics. Epigenetics Part I. That is a mouthful. What do I mean by epigenetics? We're going to dive right into it. Basically, I want to teach you today that your identity does not have to be your destiny. Your identity does not have to be your destiny. So in other words, when I say your identity, I'm thinking in terms of different maybe diseases, conditions that runs in your family, anything from diabetes to high blood pressure, even cancer. That would be your identity, or that could be your identity because you have aunts in your family that have suffered from breast cancer, maybe even died from breast cancer. Does that mean that you are going to too as well? So that would be your destiny. Well, I'm here to tell you that your identity does not have to be your destiny. In other words, just because your aunt had it and your mom had it and your grandma had it, it is not a guarantee that you are going to have it as well. But of course, there's a role that you play to minimize, the chances of those things happening, even making it so that it doesn't even happen at all. So I want to let you know today, your identity does not have to be your destiny. Just because your fathers and forefathers had it, that doesn't mean you have to have it as well. So let's talk about genetics a little bit. What is genetics? Genetics is the study of genes. And genes, what that is, it's the study of hereditary. It's a study of how traits and characteristics are passed down from parents to their offspring or to their children. And it could be anything as eye color, your blood type, or even the likelihood of certain diseases. So that's what genetics is, the study of genes. What passes down from one generation to the next? It could be physical characteristics, or it can be a likelihood of having a disease, like I was talking about earlier, like breast cancer. Now, what is epigenetics? So there's genetics, and then there's epigenetics. Where genetics is the study of genes, epigenetics is a study of how environment and lifestyle choices can influence how your genes are expressed without necessarily altering the DNA sequence itself. It's like having an on-off switch for your genes. So this is a study of how when you take your genes, and they study how certain genes can be turned on and off, right? So in other words, now there's certain genes that we get from our parents. It can never change. It can't change. And there's certain that can. I'll talk a little bit about that. So epigenetics is talking specifically about those genes that can change. So when we experience, when we are a certain way, or we experience like an illness or sickness, there's what happens is that gene is actually, we call it expressed. That gene is expressed, it's showing, it's manifesting, and therefore now you have this condition or you're in this state. So sometimes we can do things so that those genes end up not being expressed. And that's what epigenetics is the studying of which one of those genes can actually change, can be expressed or not expressed, can be manifested. Which one of them are there, and how is it that they are expressed, or how is it that they're not expressed, or how is it that they're turned on, how is it that they're turned off. This is what epigenetics is. Let's talk a little bit about what exactly is a gene. And sometimes we talk about the chromosome, the DNA, the gene, and it gets a little bit confusing. How is it different? How is one different from another? Okay, so every tissue in your body, all of our body is made up of cells, and there's many cells inside of our body. They come together and they form our different organs, and eventually just form who we are, as individuals, as a person. Forms your eyes and your hands. Every part of our body is made up of cells. Well, if you take one of those cells, and they're very small, they're microscopic, we cannot see it with the naked eye. But when you do look in a cell, every cell has a nucleus inside of it. You can see in the picture here, here's a cell, here's a nucleus. Nucleus is maybe just the centerpiece of of the cell itself. It's almost like the brain part of the cell. So we have our body, that's like the cell, and then the brain is kind of like the nucleus. And then within the nucleus is the chromosome, right? So the chromosome is this substance here that kind of looks like a huge X. And if you were to take that chromosome and unravel it, then it will have the DNA. And the DNA is the actual instructions that tell that cell how to develop and how to form. And there's different cells in our bodies, and they go on to make or create a certain tissue for a certain organ, and it has all the instructions there, so it knows exactly what to do. So you have, all the cells that you need for the different parts of your body. So the DNA is the instructions. Now, when you take a certain segment of that DNA, then that is what's called a gene, and that gene is what determines the characteristics of what an offspring is going to be, or what you have become. And then those genes in itself, or the DNA, it has bases. It has a sugar, it has a phosphate group, and then it has different bases, and then those are all made up of amino acids. So to make that a little bit clearer, when we talk about the cell, go back to that other screen, the cell, chromosome, the DNA, and the gene, we can also look at it this way. So the chromosome is like a book. I want you to think of a book, maybe the latest book that you've read. And when you open up that book, well, that book, it has a certain title to it, right? On the front cover, it has a title. Let's say the book is called How to Be Healthy. That's on the front cover. That's what that book is going to be all about. You open up the book, and maybe the first couple of pages that you turn, you will see that it has a list of all the different chapters. Okay, chapter 1, how to improve your digestive health. Chapter 2, how to improve your gut health. And then when you look into the individual chapters, it's breaking it down in an even smaller group. Now you see words and specific instructions, specific detailed information on how to improve your gut, right? So, for example, for a healthy gut, use slippery elm, herb, aloe vera. For a healthy reproductive hormone production, use wild yam, and so forth and so forth. And so, I don't know if that would help you to understand the cell, which has which inside the cell is the chromosome, and then in the chromosome is the DNA, and a piece of that DNA is the gene. So you got your book, your chapter, and then the words or specific instructions. So perhaps that might give a little clearer idea of, what the relationship is between the DNA, the genes, and the chromosome. So I was saying earlier that there are certain genes that don't change, and there's certain genes that can be changed. Those genes that can be changed, turn on and off. That is when we study epigenetics. Those will be the epigenetic type of genes. So within those genes that get passed down to us, or that we pass down to our offspring, 20% of those genes are permanent. Do you remember the verse in the Bible, in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 13, verse 23? It says, "Can the Ethiopian change his skin, or the leopard his spots? Then may ye also do good that are accustomed to do evil." And what it's saying here is, well, let's go to the Ethiopian. The Ethiopian has dark skin. Can that Ethiopian change the color of his skin? Let's say one day he wanted to be light skinned. Can he do that? Or think of the animal, the leopard that has spots. Can this leopard decide one day, you know what? I am not going to have spots today. I'm just going to be this cat and have no spots. Well, anyway, we've never seen a leopard that had no spots. The leopard cannot change his spots any more than the Ethiopian can change, or any one of us change the color of our skin. And so what the verse is saying there, it's talking about our nature as human beings. Our nature is to be at enmity with God. Bible goes on to say that our hearts are desperately wicked and evil, and we can't really help it if we're trying to change in our own strength, because it is our nature to be selfish. But as we allow God to come into our hearts, and we connect with Him, kind of like how you take a branch and you graft it onto another tree, now that tree is able to produce a certain type of fruit that it wasn't able to produce before. And that is the only way we are able to change our selfish character, and not have that selfishness, and be able to love with that perfect love that God loves with. So 20% of our genes, that's who we are. It's permanent. Other examples of that would be like our so not only our skin color, but our hair color and our eye color. Maybe some of us have freckles. Some of us might be more on the shorter side. Some of us are very tall. These are example of genes that are permanent. They don't change. There is no epigenetics that are involved there. Now, on the other hand, 80% of our genes can be changed. They are varied. They can be turned on or off. There are parts of traits that get passed down to us that we can actually change. And those traits are able to change as a result of the diet that we engage in, or the exercise, stress levels, our sleep, and other lifestyle factors. All of these play a crucial role in how our genes are expressed, how they're manifested, how it ends up coming out, and they impact our health, and they impact our lifespan, how long we live or how short we live. And there's an expression that says, genetics loads the gun while lifestyle pulls the trigger. Do you know what that means? I want you to stop and think about that for a minute. Genetics loads the gun. So we have certain genes that are passed down to us. We may have the gene to be obese and overweight. There's some of you where you have a lot of family members that are obese. Obesity runs in your family. You have that trait, that gene to be obese. So it's in there, it's in you, but it doesn't mean that you're automatically going to become obese. Depending on the diet and the lifestyle and the stress and those things that I've mentioned in the last slide, depending on how you live your life, that's what pulls the trigger. That's what makes the bullet actually goes off. So even though the gun is loaded, it's loaded, but it doesn't mean that the bullet is going to fly off. It only flies off when somebody manually pulls that trigger. So it doesn't matter how full the gun is, somebody has to actually pull that trigger. And when they pull that trigger, that is, that bullet goes flying. There's a reaction, and that is what we call the lifestyle. That's what we're referring to when we say the lifestyle we live, that will pull the trigger. That will, in the end, affect how healthy or unhealthy you are going to be. So there are so many cells in our bodies. Remember, I was saying in the beginning, the DNA, it gives instructions as to what the cell is supposed to do, how it's supposed to grow, what responsibility it's going to have, and okay, this is how it's going to grow, this is how it's going to develop, this is where it's going to go to. So every aspect of our body, all the tissues, all the organs, has its own specific cell. For example, the brain cells are called neurons. They all have their own names. We also have the bone cells. I talked about that in one of the previous podcasts that I've had, where I was talking about exercise, and I said the more you exercise, the more you build osteoblasts, and osteoblasts are specifically our bone cells. So every cell has its unique job and its unique place in which it goes. And just a quick little review here to prepare us into what I'm going to explain next. Remember, your cell, it has a nucleus inside of it, and in that nucleus are the chromosomes. You unravel that chromosome and you have a DNA, and when you take a segment of that DNA, that's where you have the genes telling us what is going to happen to you, what you're going to become. Well, on certain of those gene segments or segments of the DNA, on certain of those genes, they have markers on them. An example of a marker would be what you see in front here. I'm going to just talk about at the lower right hand side, the SNP, the SNPs. That's one of the more common ones. So SNP, that actually stands for a single nucleotide polymorphism, and that is an actual gene mutation. And sometimes our genes, they get mutated, they change differently than how they were supposed to be originally, or maybe even how they were originally. And when we get these gene mutations, that's when we start to get these illnesses. You ever hear of someone, or we read or we hear about someone being diagnosed with a condition, and it's a rare condition, very rare, and there's some kind of a gene mutation that happened there that caused their body to not either develop properly or to not function properly. So different markers that happen on the gene. Sometimes these SNPs, sometimes they can be changed, sometimes they can be reversed, sometimes they cannot. Another marker on our gene is called the methyl groups. These methyl groups are attached to the outside of the DNA sequence. These methyl groups have the ability to turn the genes on or off. So this is very interesting, very important to learn and know, because, and a very important part of our body, because there's going to be times when we want certain genes to be turned off. Sometimes genes or the DNA starts to form, and it starts to form in an abnormal way. Something along the lines is not working properly, something that we've been exposed to, and it starts to create these genes, starts to create these cells, and they grow into cells, and the instruction is off. And so the information that is given for these cells to grow, they grow, but they're not growing properly, they're not developing properly, and it results in a cell, an abnormal cell, and sometimes those cells will grow big, and it can create some kind of abnormality inside of our bodies. So for example, a tumor, that's exactly how cancer happens. It's a cell that grows, and that's what the cells do. They grow. So that's how children are little and they grow bigger, or you get a cut and it heals. It's those cells, new cells coming into play, and they're forming and they're growing big. So the children grow to be healthy adults, or our skin heals nicely. So this is a good thing. But sometimes these cells do not grow right, or when they're supposed to stop growing, they keep growing, and that's what cancer is. And so we kind of need something to kind of come in there and turn it off, so that it doesn't, so these abnormal cells do not continue to grow, or these abnormal genes do not continue to have wrong information sent out, and then these cells just gonna kind of growing abnormally and causing sicknesses and illnesses and conditions. This is what happens sometimes. So the methyl group comes into play, and it will turn those genes off. So this is to our benefit here. It helps us. It helps us to be healthy. It helps us to grow and develop normally. It helps whatever maybe accident that we have, helps it to heal, better in the way it's supposed to heal. So believe it or not, we do have the ability to control somewhat the way our genes grow and develop, basically the way our genes express itself. And they could either go in one direction or the other direction. And it's very heavily dependent on the way we live our lives. What is our lifestyle like? Are we smoking? Are we drinking? And what are we eating? What is our nutrition? And so there was a study that was done. They took two identical twins that share the same DNA. And even though they're identical, they can develop distinct health outcomes due to environmental and lifestyle factors influencing the way their gene is expressed. So looking at the picture of the two twins there over on the right-hand side, they look the same in the sense of their skin color, their hair color, the features. Got the same eyes, got the same nose. But look at that. One of them is thin or average size, and the other one is overweight. But wait a second, they're twins. How is it that one's weighs a lot more, much more overweight than the other one? The other one is just of normal size. How can that be? They're twins. And so it really has a lot to do with, what do you think, their diet. While one was eating a healthy diet, maybe eating a lot of fruits and vegetables, eating a high fiber diet, not eating a lot of sweets and junk food, the other one was probably eating a lot of junk food, eating a lot of carbs, a lot of sugars, maybe going out to eat at the fast food restaurants all the time. And it's not only diet, but the stress in one's life. How much are they exercising? How much are they sleeping? All of these things play a factor in the way we end up. So that's why I was saying to you at the very beginning, you may come from a family where there's a lot of obesity, where every other person has diabetes, but you don't have to fall into that, or you don't have to assume that, well, you know what? let me brace myself because this runs in my family and this is who I'm going to be. And it's not only with physical traits, but even like mental traits. Um, you might come from a family where a lot of the members are suffering from anxiety or depression or get uptight easily or impatient easily or whatever it is. Just because they were that way, the mom was like that way, dad was like the way that way, it doesn't mean that you need to be that way as well. But there is a work, there is a step, there is a responsibility that you have to take in order to get that change to happen and to take place. So I want to end with you today with the study of the agouti rat. So there was a scientist one day that studied these rats, and he wanted to just kind of prove a point. And well, he was experimenting. He came up with a hypothesis, and he wanted to see if it was right. He wanted to see how much a mom, or how much we are influenced by our mom, even before we are born, or even at a very young age. How much does that affect what type of genes, get passed down to us, or, what kind of a person we become? And his theory was that there is a big effect, on the condition of mom, the state of mom. There's a huge effect that transfers down to the child, even in utero. So in the example of the agouti rat, what they did is they took two mice, or two rats rather, and one of them, they gave them regular mouse food, or they call it mouse chow. The other one also got the mouse food, but in addition, it got supplements. So it got things like folic acid and choline. These are supplements that help with neurological development, all the more. And when it was all said and done, when these moms gave birth to their rats, the mom that had the supplemental food, her offspring were healthy. They were regular size, regular color brown rats. The mom that didn't have the supplements but had the mouse food, and maybe it was processed, but that's all she had. Her offspring ended up having the fat, the obese, unusual color, the yellow color, of her offspring. They were more unhealthy. And so in this study, what the scientist was proving, or wanted to see if it was true, was when the mom had a certain diet, did it change, or did it influence the way in which her offspring developed and grew? And yeah, certainly it did, because it took two rats. They were the same rats. One had the supplements, one did not. The ones that had the supplement, the offspring was healthy. The one that did not have the supplements, it was not healthy. And that, and I'm not pushing supplements right here. And I mean, we're pregnant, and we're told to take a prenatal vitamins, which helps, especially if you didn't take care of yourself very well before. But really, the point that he wanted to make more than anything is that healthy life, that healthy lifestyle, really is going to affect the genetics, the genes of your baby. They say as early as the first trimester. I know that there are certain other functional nutritionists like myself that specialize in fertility. They recommend that if you are wanting to get pregnant, if you are looking to have a child and you're actually trying, they say that you should take a good 6 months, maybe even longer than that, but at least before you even start trying to conceive, to give like a little recheck, of your health, and really work towards eating healthy and living that healthy lifestyle before you actually conceive, because all of that plays such a huge part on the health of your child and the genes, that you pass down to your child. Well, there was more of that study that was done, and they had two sets of mom rats, and now this time the offspring is born, and one of them tended to lick their offspring and nurture it. We see animals doing this. We see the dogs doing it with their pups, and the cats doing it with their kittens, and they licked them a lot. But the other offspring, the other mother, she did not do that licking to her offspring. And the ones that did not get that licking and that nurturing, they tended to have more anxious types of personalities. They tended to be more anxious, uneasy. And so maybe some of you that struggle with anxiety, I'm not saying all of you, I'm not giving a diagnosis here, but there's many reasons why we have anxiety. But one of the reasons sometimes could be just that environment that you were in when you were a young baby, a young toddler. And so you just kind of develop this anxiety as part of your personality trait, but that can be changed. Also, too, and I'll end with this one here. In doing this study, there was a mom rat. So there's two mom rats. So this is before they gave birth to their offspring. One was in a stressful environment. So what they did is they took that rat, and every now and then they would put a cat in its presence. And we all know how rats feel about mice. How rats feel about cats, and even how mice feel about cats. It gives them a lot of anxiety. They get scared. And every so often, they would put that cat in front of that mouse all throughout its pregnancy, while the other where the other mouse in the other group did not get that exposure to the cat. They had a very loving, nurturing, comfortable home, environment as they were carrying their babies. Well, when the offspring was finally born, the ones that came from the mom where she was exposed to a very stressful environment, the cat, those offspring tended to have traits of anxiety. They were anxious. They had a lot of anxiety, suffered from anxiety. Even if there was no cat that was put in their presence, they just kind of tended to be jumpy and uneasy and on edge all the time. Is that interesting? Even though there was nothing that was placed before them to get them afraid. Now, on the other hand, the mom that was in a comfortable, warm, pleasant environment, very nurturing, when her offspring was born, her offspring had much, much less anxiety, or no anxiety, at all. So how important it is, that environment of mom, the state that she's in. You can pass certain genes down, and then in addition to the offspring, having more anxiety, they were also more susceptible to disease. They had more of a tendency of developing that sickness or that illness. Also, to the mother that got the supplement, so in other words, that got them good nutrition, less tendency to get ill and sick. But the one that did not have that good nutrition, her offspring had a much higher tendency of developing illnesses and sicknesses. And that's the way it is with us today, because we do this study with the rats. So it's pretty amazing, because we really give our children a advantage or disadvantage, or a higher start in life, or more of a limited start in life, just by how we care for ourselves. Mom especially, but even dad too, because dad is he gives a half of the makeup, of the child, but mom more than anything, because she's the one that carries the baby, and whatever state she's in throughout her entire pregnancy, that is what she's passing down to her offspring, to her baby. every day, all the time. But I want to encourage you. I definitely want to leave you on an encouraging note here that regardless of what background you have come from, regardless of what your fathers and forefathers have suffered from, have been exposed to, you still have the opportunity, or you still have the ability to control the condition of your health, or the state of your health, and whether you will also become anxious or be anxious for the rest of your life, or whether you will be fat, or whether you will have diabetes. You can control that. You can change it. You can stop the cycle here and maybe give your offspring a better opportunity. So next week, I'm going to talk more into, well, how do we change that? How do we make it so that I don't have to be anxious anymore? I don't have to have diabetes anymore. I don't have to worry about whether my child is going to suffer from, any type of mental illness, because this definitely runs in my family. Please tell me, what it is that do I need to do? I'll give you a little hint right now. It definitely does start with our diet and our lifestyle. What are you eating? What are you not eating? And how are you living your life? So we will dive more into that next week. And I would like to encourage you to join me. But I hope you can think about what I've said here and what you've learned here, and know that it really does make a difference. And we can make a difference. So I don't want anybody to stop here and think, oh, well, this is who I am. I can never change. My mom was like that. But you can. And I won't only show you and help you to know how to do that or what to do, but how to actually incorporate that, how to get yourself to do it. Because I know we struggle with motivation, but there is a way. And where there's a will, there is a way. So thank you for joining me again today to the Abundant Wellness Podcast. I want to remind you again that we meet the second and fourth Saturday of the month. And if anybody would like to learn more about what I do, who I am, I invite you to visit my website, journeytoabundantwellness.com. When you go to the website, you should also be able to see my different social medias, and you should be able to just click. I have a Instagram as well, and I told you about the YouTube channel. You should be able to find those there, and just check out my other comments and podcasts and information there. I do give free consultations, so if there's anything that is on your mind that you'd like to discuss a little bit further, or anything that I've talked about and you have some questions, I invite you to give me a call. You can leave a message, a voice message or text message, and I would love to be able to talk to you, because you know what? Life is so much better when we feel good, when we have our health. That's why I am called Abundant Wellness. You can experience life more abundantly, exceedingly abundantly. I used to be called that before, and that is a promise. We read that promise in Ephesians chapter 3, verse 20, and we can experience life so much better. It doesn't have to be this struggle all the time, and I'd love to be able to help you to learn how to get to that point and how to be there. Well, thank you so much again for joining me, and I will see you in a couple of weeks. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.